Carl and Liam here from Brrraaains A Head-Banging Life, gbhblofficial.com for short, and we're getting Goosebumps with a double episode. It's back to that, episodes 11 and 12. Stay Out of the Basement. One of the most iconic stories of it. There is the book. Do you remember the original?
Yeah, I remember that one a lot, actually. I think that's one of the ones I might have actually read.
Yes. Yeah, it's one of the earliest ones. I think I've got number three, the third book written. That says a lot.
This was always a favourite of mine, this episode. So I think that's why I must have sought out the book as well.
Yeah, it's directed by William Fruitt, and I'll say now, I think this is probably the best stuff we've had so far. The best story we've had so far.
Yeah, it's very like movie-like almost, I feel.
It does some proper horror stuff. It's got great tension building, great acting, great resolution. Everything works great, basically. Well,
Again, this is another one that like the first part would always be shown on TV, but then the second part they wouldn't show the conclusive bit, and it would always be really annoying to me.
Oh, really? Okay, I remembered a lot from this.
Yeah, I remember because there's a part in the episode where you see the worms on the bed, where and that would always be the to continue part, and then it would just never conclude. It'd be well annoying.
Okay, cool. We begin with a young girl saying goodbye to her mother. This is Margaret Brewer, played by Becky Lantos, and she doesn't want her mother to go because she's worried about her father. Her mother has to go as her sister is sick. Margaret complains that her father has no time for her anymore. She says something about how he doesn't even call her princess anymore. A throwaway line that will come back later on in the episode.
I know all that. I just think something's wrong. Something else.
Like what?
I don't know.
We'll give him a chance, Margaret. It's a tough time for him. Everything's going to be fine.
Her brother, Casey Brewer, Blake McGrath, arrives to say goodbye too. Margaret continues to complain about her father always being in the basement. We then see Dr. Brewer, played by Jediah Katz, in his basement working on some sort of experiment. And it's immediately clear it's like very leafy, very green down there. Green light is a major element of this episode.
Definitely.
Casey points out that he's a botanist, and Mrs. Brewer says he's trying to prove the university that sacked him was wrong. And I was like, well, there's your red flag. There is your red flag. If the university sacked him and he's now, I'm going to prove them wrong, it's like, probably not good what he's doing, right?
Yes. Got sacked for a reason.
Exactly. Margaret continues to complain and suggests something is very wrong. Mrs. Brewer says goodbye to the kids, and they go to get their father so he can take her to the airport. They knock on the basement door. He doesn't answer, so they go inside. And on the way down the stairs, he opens the door from the top and shouts at them to stay out of the basement, basically. Don't go in the basement. Fine. Stay out of the basement! The kids come up and apologize, but he also apologizes and just sort of says, like, look, stay out of the basement. I'm working down there. Don't go in there. Totally fine. Totally fair. Stay the fuck out of the basement, kids.
So in the episode.
Yeah. He leaves with Mrs. Brewer as the kids wave goodbye. Sometime later, Casey's playing a video game, but Margaret hears weird noises. So she gets Casey's attention and they realize it's coming from the basement. Now, one thing I praise this episode for are the sound effects it utilizes for what's going on in the basement. There's some great sound effects.
Yeah, that's true.
They think it might be an animal. A stray cat might have got through the basement window, so decide to go down to make sure somebody's not hurt or trapped down there. You know what? I buy it. That's fine. Buy it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Inside the basement, they find it's really, really hot and very, very green. Not just the lighting, but it's like a jungle almost to a degree. There's a lot of fucking trees and plants and stuff. Big old basement.
Yeah.
They also discuss the fact that the plants sound like they're breathing. And Margaret notices one in particular is moving. So what does she do? What do we all do? What has caused chaos and all of horror to date? Something looks weird. Let me touch it.
Always.
I mean, literally, we have an Alien franchise because someone went, this egg is weird. Let me put my face near it.
Yeah.
Obviously, it reaches out and grabs her with its vines. She manages to free herself. Casey comes along. He doesn't believe her. Outside, they hear Dr. Brewer returning, so they quickly run back upstairs. We then get a kind of tension scene as Casey realizes he left his sweater in the basement, so goes to get it. Margaret tries to hurry him up, and we're cutting from Casey trying to find his sweater to Dr. Brewer slowly making his way to the entrance of the house, getting his key and stuff like that. I liked it.
Yeah, there's a lot of tension in the air for sure.
He takes forever, Casey, but he eventually gets it and out of the basement in time. But they're sweaty and they've clearly been rushing around. So Brewer is very suspicious of them and demands to know if they went into the basement. The kids decide not to lie. They just admit they went in and why they went in. Yeah.
Yeah.
I liked it as well is he softens completely and sort of says like, all right, are you okay?
Yeah, there's good subtleties in his behavior.
Yeah,
sure.
It's very important, I thought, as well, because it's only at the end of the episode, that softer behavior, I was like, well, there was a real big clue, clue.
It's important for the conclusion, for sure.
Yeah. He leads them to a table and says, look, if I tell you what I'm doing down there, maybe will it stop you wanting to go down there? And they're like, yeah, we think so.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he actually tells them nothing. He tells them nothing. He says he's doing something in regards to splicing plant genes and then says, I can't tell you any more than that. And I'm like, well, that was pointless then.
Yeah. They're more confused now than they were before.
Yeah, I was like, splicing what, mate? What do you mean? What are you doing? Creating special plants?
Made them more curious.
Yeah. He refuses to watch films with the kids because he has work to do and goes back to the basement. That night, Margaret is sleeping while we see Dr. Brewer working. That's that scene. That's it. The next morning, Margaret has made a nice breakfast for her father. She knocks on the basement door, but she doesn't get an answer. Hours later, and I love this, they shoot it hours later from back at the kitchen table where you see the breakfast still sitting there. And straight away it tells you, okay, he's so busy, he hasn't come up for hours.
Continuity.
Yeah. The kids talk about him, but he comes upstairs at that point. Casey goes outside to play. Margaret goes on to check on her father, who went straight into the kitchen and finds that he's now wearing a baseball cap and eating something, quite devouring it over the kitchen sink. So yeah, I mean, he's hungry, right? He's been working, he's hungry.
Yep.
He doesn't see that she sees him. And it's only when he starts to properly down some water, like we're talking about like chugging that shit, I felt like go down it. She gets his attention, but he has no interest in her food. And he just says, look, I'm going back downstairs to the basement. I'm not hungry. When he's gone, she then looks under the counter to what he was eating, and it's plant food. He was eating plant food. Ooh.
That was strange.
Indeed, very strange.
Plant food.
Later, she's called her mother, who dismisses it as always. Of course they do. Goosebumps. No one believes it.
No one believes the kids.
But what she says annoys me. When she says, oh, I caught him and saw him eating plant food, her mother's response is, it's probably something to do with his work. I'm like, what? What?
They always have the worst responses.
Yes. She says she won't be coming home just yet, and we do get a wicked jump scare here. I liked it. It's directly behind her. A fucking father just pops up, grabs the phone out of her hand, and he's talking to his wife saying, look, everything's fine. Yeah, I'll spend more time with Margaret. And while he's doing it, he just has his eyes trained directly on her. Judea Katz, who plays Dr. Brewer, his intensity when he's now dialing it up is brilliant. It's one of the best things about this episode.
Completely agree. It's great.
After he's spoken to his wife, he puts the phone down and he walks away, and he's proper giving Margaret the stink eye, man, the proper evil eye look. Just like, That night, Margaret is woken by strange sounds in the hallway. She goes out and spies her father in the bathroom, unwrapping a wound on his arm that bleeds green goo. What a brilliant effect.
Yeah, it looks like it's legit seeping out of his arm, doesn't it?
Really, really strong stuff. Really, really like that would upset a kid. It looks gross.
Yeah,
even more weird as well is that when he bends his head down to wash his face, and his hair has green leaves in it. And again, I thought it looked really good.
Yeah, it does. It does. Considering this is a show of so many poor looking effects, it's like, you know, it's it's like a smaller type of effect, I think. So that's why they nailed it a bit better, I think.
As he comes up looking in the mirror, he thinks he kind of sees her in the back. She quickly runs back to bed and pretends to be asleep. He comes in, checks that she's asleep, but it does look like she's gotten away with it. And we then cut to the basement. We see more plants down there. The next morning, Margaret wakes Casey up to tell him what she saw. Casey obviously thinks she's just teasing him because that's what everybody does in this fucking show.
Yes.
Dr. Brewer then calls the kids downstairs and they're shocked to find him making breakfast. This is where Casey queries the cap. Look, Dad, you don't even like baseball. Why are you wearing a cap for? Dr. Brewer just outright ignores it and points out that the kids think he has been acting weird. And he asks Margaret directly, look, is something wrong? And these kids are pretty honest, and it's her father. So I guess they feel like they can just say these things. And she tells him that she saw him last night in the bathroom. He explains that it was a temporary side effect and that he didn't want to worry them. He says he's working on making a plant-animal hybrid. Okay.
Okay, I mean, it's an explanation at least.
It's something. He then offers them breakfast, which is some sort of green goop, and demands they eat and says it is a special recipe. This is a very intense scene. He's very intense about eating this food. And you kind of know it's trouble.
Eat.
What is it?
It's my special recipe. Go ahead. Dig in.
Doesn't smell so good.
It'll taste just fine.
Yeah, that's some disgusting looking green slimy mush, man, I have to say.
Doesn't look good.
No.
Thankfully, someone rings the doorbell, forcing Dr. Brewer to go check, and they use the opportunity to get rid of the food in the bin. The visitor is from the university, a colleague of Dr. Brewer, who has come to check up on his work. And you hear him saying something in the background about going like, look, they really shouldn't have let you go to university. I wanted to see how you're doing, and maybe we can get you back in. Fair enough.
Yeah.
The kids show their father the empty bowls, and he tells them to go outside and play. We then see Dr. Brewer go into the basement with his colleague. Outside, the kids are playing with a frisbee, and Margaret throws it into some bushes. The frisbee lands near the basement window. Casey hears the two men arguing downstairs. But before he can kind of work out what's going on, he's attacked by a big vine that's coming out of the basement window. This is where part one ends. Now, was that for you?
No, I swear it's I could have sworn it was the worms on the bed part where it does to be continued, or maybe I think that's actually just a commercial break then, actually, during that scene. Because I remember it goes commercial break and then it cuts back and it's like back on the worms again. I remember something about that scene, but no,
I can only speak for what's on Netflix because I watched these episodes on Netflix.
That's just my memory playing, but I don't know, I might be wrong.
So, episode 2 begins, the second part, should I say, with a recap. We kick back straight into where we left off as Casey's grabbed by the vine. Margaret comes over to help once she realizes he's not messing around. At first, she's all like, oh, stop playing around. That same fucking trope. Stop doing that. And what really annoys me about this is she can see. She's walking towards him going, stop playing around. And then she's like, oh, it's a big vine around you. How bad are your eyes, Margaret? How blind are you?
I know, it's true.
She manages to free him, and they run away, watching the vine go back into the basement. Casey tells Margaret what you heard. Dr. Brewer then appears behind them and is, as usual, angry, standoffish. He's very, very angry all the time in this episode, and he puts the kids on edge. And I will give them credit. They seem very frightened of him constantly.
Yeah. Yeah, the acting is really solid throughout from everyone in this one. think that's why it's so such a strong episode for the most part, because in many of their other episodes, there's a lot of poor acting, quite cheesy, whereas it's quite a serious tone throughout in this one.
Agreed. He denies that a fight happened and says the other doctor had left. Margaret quit. Oh, I didn't see him leave. And that just annoys Dr. Brewer again. He's kind of like, are you questioning me? That kind of thing. Starts to demand what they're up to. They're insisting with just playing. Casey asks the stupid question, are you a mad scientist? Dr. Brewer says, no, I'm an angry scientist, and then sends them to their rooms. It is an intense scene, done very, very well.
You're not a mad scientist, are you, Bud?
No, I'm an angry scientist. Now, both of you, up to your rooms.
But we could have sworn we heard it.
Did you hear what I said?
Yeah, but...
Go!
We see Dr. Brewer working in his basement, and we see him opening a cupboard that has more plants in it. He seems to struggle with something inside that's making muffled sounds. And whatever's in there, he gives whatever's in there like a drop out of a liquid, out of a syringe, before he locks it back up again. So it's kind of like, what's in there? Who knows? But what helps is... Go on.
It really, the whole episode, I think, does a great job of building your curiosity. You really understand where the kids are coming from, and just wondering what the hell is going on. Kind of really want to find out what it is.
Agreed. And they kind of drop a big hint as the camera swoops past, and you see on the floor are a pile of clothes that belong to the other doctor. That night, both Casey and Margaret are woken by the sound of drilling. They go downstairs to find their father putting a heavy-duty lock on the basement door. He tells them he also put locks on the windows, and he's just another dick again. He's been a right dick towards these poor kids. But he does say he's going out for a few hours. Margaret decides that's the perfect time to call their mother, but finds the number that was written on a bit of paper on the fridge is gone. It's just not there. Margaret suspects her father, tells Casey that she thinks their dad may have done something bad, basically, that he may have attacked or hurt the other doctor. So she decides to go into his room upstairs to see if the phone number is inside. She opens the door and finds the room a mess, like it's been ransacked almost. They continue to look around, and while in his room, the phone rings, but goes to an answer machine, and they hear it's the wife of the missing doctor who visited earlier, and he never came home. So he is actually missing.
Hi, this is Gloria Merrick, Dr. Merrick's wife. I was wondering if my husband was there. I'm a little worried. He was supposed to be home hours ago. If you hear from him or you know where he is, could you please call me at 555-0101? Thank you.
But they're interrupted by the sound of their father coming home. Margaret panics, and in a panic knocks the answer machine off, which kind of delays them leaving the room. They'd been able to leave really quickly, but she has to put the answer, just as it starts playing, so she has to stop it from playing and put it back on there so it doesn't look like they were there. Clever here, though. Casey gets out first and distracts Dr. Brewer. So that kind of gives Margaret time to hide inside his room. He does query where she is. He says, oh, she's in her room. He doesn't go to look. He just asks Casey a few questions and then says he forgot something, so he's going into his room. Margaret is under the bed as Dr. Brewer does look around suspiciously. He's looking around to sort of see if anything's out of the place. How he'd know, considering the fucking mess. But he sits down on his bed. And as he sits in his bed, we see that's where we see Margaret is underneath. And a couple of worms fall down, kind of creeping her out. But he also drops a wallet, which lands perfectly for Margaret to see the ID of the colleague from the university, which pretty much confirms Dr. Brewer did something.
Sinister.
He then leaves again. So Margaret comes out. Casey joins her inside the room. They, wondering where the worms came from, she pulls the cover off the bed to find it covered in soil, dirt, and worms. And fuck me, is this a cool looking effect? It's not it's real. It's real worms.
Yeah, they use real worms. They seem to like using real insects in the Goosebumps, but it's a proper gross out moment for sure.
Oh, it is. It's imagine that, guys. It's a worm bed filled with worms.
Yeah, it's nasty looking.
So that's it. Margaret decides we have to find out the truth. Doesn't matter if he's pissed off anymore. Find out the truth and get into the basement. So they go to the garage first to get some weapons and find, handily, weed killer. They then break into the basement using a crowbar. And in the basement, they find it more like a jungle than ever before. Like full-on overgrown, plants everywhere. And they're getting attacked by tentacles. So they have to use the weed killer constantly to sort of scare the tentacles off. But some of the stuff here, I think it would scare the fuck out of a child. As the first things we see are hands and legs that appear to be growing out of some of the plants.
Yeah.
That's not the one, though. The one is the plant that tried to grab Margaret when she first in. It's really big now. When they get close to it, it opens up to reveal it has a face. That shit would look horrible.
Yeah.
It grabs her by a tentacle, but the weed killer destroys it. They then hear some banging and muffled cries, and they find that locked door from earlier on and the close. And they figure that the missing doctor from the university is inside. They open it, and inside they find normal plants, just normal plants. But their father bursts out, and he's tied up and gagged, and he's kind of got a green hue about him. He's still got the green leaves in his hair and all that, but he's gagged and tied. Casey refuses to believe that it's their father, but Margaret thinks it's him. They agree not to let him free, but to remove the tape. And that's where he says, look, I've been locked up in his cupboard. That other one is not your father. Untie me. Now, here's the problem for believing him. He constantly says, I'll explain later. Just untie me. And it is a bit like, stop saying that.
That's what he's most interested in, is getting free.
Yeah.
Which is suspicious as fuck, man.
It is. He says the other him is a plant copy. But thankfully, the kids aren't too quick to believe him. And Margaret eventually relents and decides to untie him. And once he's free, they kind of back off. But they kind of imply he might be a villain as he gets up slowly and picks up the crowbar as if he's gonna use it as a weapon.
What are you doing?
He's not our real father.
He is. I know he is. Aren't you?
Before anything can happen, the other father arrives and says he's the real one. They do that whole thing where the two men try to tell Casey to spray the other. No, spray him because I'm the real one. Margaret ends up taking over and tells them both to stay back or she'll spray them both.
A real conundrum.
Yeah, they look the same. One's got kind of a green hue. Then we've got obviously the normal one. There's nothing that really suggests the other until the real one, the one that was locked up, confirms his realness by calling her what? Princess.
Yes.
So that's enough for her. She sprays the plant version, who melts instantly, and everyone is really happy.
Princess. Princess.
That's it. We cut to sometime later. Sometime later, Dr. Brewer has seemingly abandoned all his work. He's shaved his head. The shaved head look is actually a really good look for him.
Yeah.
And apparently, he's been invited back to the university. And I wasn't entirely sure why. Like, this isn't come back and work for us. This is, you are never working here again, mate. Whatever you were doing was crazy.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he presented some of the research he was working on and they liked it. I have no idea.
And we get this really awkward scene where, because obviously we don't know what happened. We don't know how this happened. So Margaret walks over and says to her father, I'm still not really sure what happened. And Dr. Brewer's like, well, let me explain it again to you, but for us the first time. And it's a bit like, Jesus, that was an awkward way. That was an awkward way for us to get an explanation.
Yeah.
He says he cut his hand in a slide. Some of his blood mixed with plant molecules, creating the hybrid. Fascinated by it, he decided to carry on and ended up creating the copy of himself. That's your explanation. He somehow managed, with a bit of blood and plant molecule, to create an exact copy of himself.
Yeah, that's quite a bit more complicated than that, I'm sure, than he made it sound.
Yeah,
Don't want to get too technical, man.
Yeah, but what it's not the best ending because they all start making jokes about it and they're going back to the house. And Dr. Brewer says, "Oh, let's have lunch. I made mixed salad and vegetables." And I was like, "Oh."
Yeah, I find it funny, like in these situations where the kids or whatever, they always go for these clearly traumatizing events. Like in the next conclusive scene, they'll have the kids. It's also lighthearted and stuff. It's like, she basically just killed some weird like plant human hybrid that was her father.
Yeah.
They've been living with for days, and they had many interactions with and stuff. And she basically killed him with weed killer. And it's like, I should probably like screw up a little bit,
Listen, anybody for lunch? I got a great mixed salad and some garden vegetables.
Oh.
No, I'm only kidding. I got hamburgers for everybody. Let's go. Let's go.
I'll be right there.
You know what the answer is?
What's that?
Therapy.
Of course. Therapy. Why didn't I think of that? The solution to every problem.
We didn't get an extra sort of sting in the tail as well as the episode ends as Margaret's tying her shoe next to some flowers. And one of them talks and says that it's her father. And then all these other flowers speak up and like, no, I'm your father. No, help me, I'm your father. And there's like loads of different flowers saying that they're her father. And it's a silly ending, but I did smile at it.
I'm your father. I'm your real father.
Oh, I'm your father.
No, I'm your father. I'm your father. I'm your father. No, I'm your father. No, he isn't. I'm your father.
Yeah, it's one of those again where it's like you don't really need that extra twist at the end, but they felt the need to shoehorn it in there. But I liked it because it kind of like leaves it in a way of she'll never truly know if she made like the right choice. Because that means all these plants are claiming to be her father. So did she or did she not make the right choice? It's an interesting way to leave it.
It is an interesting one. This is one of the best Goosebumps episodes you could see from season 1 alone. Probably I would imagine the entire series. What I particularly want to praise is that unlike other two-parters, I think this one needed the 2 parts.
Yeah, sometimes
felt like
yeah, it's true. Sometimes like the camping one felt like a bit it felt like a bit dragged out. But this one it needed the more like stretched runtime, so you could see more of the relationship between the kids and the father and get to know like how that was going and stuff like that, and it built the tension between the whole what's in the basement, because that's the whole mystery about what's in there and stuff. And I think it is paced like really well throughout the whole episode.
And as we said at the start, the strength in this episode relies completely on the acting, from the children to the father to even the mother and her brief role, to all of those actors. They did a wonderful job, and I think this is probably the scariest episode you could watch, because it does tension the best we've seen so far. It makes every moment in interaction with their plant father very, very uncomfortable, very, very dangerous feeling. I felt it. I was watching it earlier on at the time of recording, and I was like, oh, I'm feeling a bit uncomfortable here as he's proper, like, getting in their faces and shit like that. It must have been, I'd love to know what it was like on the set.
Yeah, because he's quite intense, and like you say, how he's trying to be really intimidating towards the kids and stuff like that. So it would have been interesting to see how that would be. But it's also, it takes a parental figure and turns them into the monster, which is quite an interesting thing, rather than having like an actual monster. Of course, he's like a weird plant man, but it's the idea of like you being afraid of this person that's supposed to like protect you. You can imagine being the kids in that scenario, and it's like, yeah, that'd be scary, because they're all alone, and, with this weird, like their dad who's just acting really weird, and they don't know what's going on. Yeah, and I think the mystery is, it keeps you hooked from start to finish.
Agreed. It really is a very strong episode. Remember, you don't have to watch this series in a row. Nothing's tying into each other. So if you've got time and you have Netflix and it's on there, both these episodes are on the Netflix. So do check them out. I think you'll come away quite pleased.
Also, I think there's like with certain episodes, like this one particularly, I think it could be like ripe for even making like some kind of remake, where maybe like take the concept and like turn it into some kind of like actual horror movie or something. I think it's got possibilities for something like that, because it's a solid idea.
It is. But of course, let us know what you think of it in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. You can check us out on gbhbl.com as well as on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and Tumblr. Go to Patreon and help us out over there. That's patreon.com/gbhbl, as well as Big Cartel, where you can find some of our merchandise. We have a podcast running on SoundCloud and Apple Podcasts. And of course, if you like this video, do us a favour, hit the subscribe button and help the channel grow. Games, horror and heavy metal. What else is life for?